A lot of different reasons. I mean, first and foremost, it is a rematch of one of the very first episodes we've ever done, way back in season 1, and the very first 3D fight we ever.
Surprise, because it was.
Yeah, it was the first. Funny story about that. So, like, okay, old school. I'll try to be brief here. Old school death battle, like real old school death battle, was messy, right? It was just me. Chad was helping out where he could, and then eventually brought on one animator. That was the team. And that animator decided at one point, like,
Ben, he came up to me and you're like, dude, the fight's in 3D. And I was like, what?
3D death battle. So it's great to revisit it and that's one of many reasons for us to revisit this matchup, right? It was also the first time we ever brought in an RPG character into death battle.
It was also one of the most heated debates in death battle history, figuring out the matchup. You know, so like I pretty much just, you know, voice boomstick now and then every now and then contribute with like create a little bit creatively, but I will say, and I miss it. I get nostalgic sometimes. You're like, oh, I didn't get to like. Don't miss that part at all. I'm like glad I have nothing to do with this other than voicing the character.
Call like the research team, like DJ here. They're so good at figuring out all the nooks, the ins and outs, like even before the call, that generally speaking.
And Final Fantasy VII is one of my favorite stories. So we just came together, like, okay, and when the meeting comes up, I'm just gonna answer them whenever they come up.
That's because a lot of it was also like looking back on how we have interpreted Final Fantasy characters across Death Battle's life, which has been different multiple times. Definitely old school episodes from season 1 and season 2. There's a very different interpretation of how Final Fantasy characters should be in Death Battle. The character before, so we had the question come up of like, how does player agency come into play? Like, do we incorporate that?
Because despite what some people think, we really do try and have no bias in these episodes whatsoever. So that was a big question. Right? It's like, what would Link? Or sorry, what would I mean Link? But mainly it was like, what would Cloud bring with all the different ways you can customize him?
Right. There were some questions about Materia, some questions, well, and Link. Like, would Link have access to something like the Goron sword or the Fairy sword, things like that? And it sort of created a problem that didn't need to exist at all, is what we eventually decided much later down the road, which is why in this episode we're giving them everything, basically. It's not quite a composite, but in a lot of ways it can be seen that way because of the way Link's spirit, like, is reborn and
take out the characters at their maximum potential. Like, if you kind of want to, I mean, maybe DJ and you guys could speak to this a little bit in more clarity and detail, but that's kind of what I think of when I hear what you guys are talking about here.
Yes, it's equal parts maximum potential and equal parts what do people want to see and what would be usable in the fight. I know that using a lot of links has been contentious among the community, especially in Death Battle. That's all you can see in the comments. But for what me and Ultra had ended up deciding for Link and Cloud is that, okay, Link is virtually that we see on screen to get everything that he needs, and he has it canonically. So there wasn't really any arguments of, why didn't you include this? Well, it's there. We did it. We did consider it.
Which is something we did have in old school Death Battle, is like the what if question that maybe we treated a little bit differently back then, but still exists to us.
It's what they take to battle, right? It helped us solve a problem we had at the time, and it made it so that we were like, see, the game's decided. We didn't decide, so it's not. There's no bias here.
It really skewed it in Link's favor, unfortunately, just because of the way those two games work. It wasn't a balanced idea. But either way, jumping into this episode, this version of to re-experience these characters and bring them back in a way, especially with all like the new stuff as well, like Breath of the Wild and the new Final Fantasy remake and all that.
The remake, I'm researching Cloud for the opposite result. So
spoilers. I mean, a big reason why is because of how we interpret Cloud differently. And something like Supernova, which before we looked at as I don't even really remember the reasoning we gave for Supernova not being an actual supernova.
But then we did Sephiroth.
Yep.
And they were like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, there was a chunk of time we did Cloud versus Link and Tifa versus Yang, and that was like the old school like interpretation of Final Fantasy, right? And then there was like this chunk of time where we didn't bring a Final Fantasy character into Death Battle, maybe at some point we had said like, something's weird right now. We're doing this wrong. We got to figure this out. And then we took a break. I don't remember. But eventually brought in Sephiroth and was like we need to do Link versus Cloud again. There are very few. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of death battles that we can look back on and say like, match episode, right? Of every single one that we don't necessarily agree with these days. Because like that takes up another slot that another matchup could be in, and these things take a lot of time and resources, so we can't do every single one. But there are certainly some that really deserve it, and this is one that I think really does.
You know, when this match was brought up, I thought it was be kind of funny if Link, we just grab the same match and then just change like the screw attack watermark on the match, and then you'll be like, okay, done. There you go. but instead we get an insane 3D fight by the Source Wheel Maker team now that they have moved from Source Wheel Maker to Blender, and just ended up just amazing.
One of the more interesting things that the community has brought up is that this is nice to see, like, this is the first Blender.
It's interesting. And Peach versus Zelda was the first time we had, I believe that was our first contracted fight out to an animator that wasn't me.
That one used like 3D environments?
That's wild.
Yeah.
Or Zelda was. I don't remember. That was a long time ago. But yeah, I guess it has been. That's very interesting. Hallmark thing or anything, but it might have. I think that was Sam's first episode, so there you go.
I just remember the calculation of
these rocks
the pressure needed to explode a human head.
I love how this looks, and man, props Luis for such a good, like the whole animation team did such a fantastic job.
I love him kicking the pots.
Like a credible lighting job on it, like figuring out how to really make a death battle look good in Blender was so much fun and exciting and difficult at times, but exciting.
Yeah. Well, it's really cool, but I never used it for anything this big, basically. So like when the team was like done with this really awesome and I just really love how the animation looks. So after all that was done, I went in and kind of helped them out with some environment lighting and some like 3D effects as well, like the Stasis and the Daito and Sander and Duba. They just they completely nailed this fight. Like this definitely came out really well.
Yeah, we really wanted to make sure that not only did it feel like, because again, like last time, we didn't really know what we were doing, right? Way back when. So we wanted to really throw in as much as we could with these characters. The Force Sword, a bunch of different materia.
Yeah.
The Fusion Sword, the freaking Invisible, the Magic Cloak, transforming into a fairy. There's all these random things that these characters have had throughout the years that we just wanted. We wanted to really kind of bring in stuff from across the spectrum of these characters' histories.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I've said this before. I probably have said it a bunch of times actually, but animating more than 2 characters, really fucking hard.
Really maybe not the best idea for our first Blender fight, but
that Force sequence is so cool, and I feel horrible for your team,
guys.
Into the Blender trenches.
Guys, I fucking love how we use Fierce Deity. He's a fucking monster. The dude is over 10 feet tall. It's crazy. I don't remember him being super tall in Majora's Mask. I did play him in Hyrule Warriors, but then I looked at footage of him and was like, holy shit, since when was he this giant?
Yeah, I did not remember that either.
Yeah, we saw a chart of all the characters in in The Legend of Zelda, and then they just Deity Link and gigantic. It's like, holy shit.
Seeing that and looking into what the Fierce Deity mask really is, and it's the power of a dark god, I was like, okay, this is like a horror monster. We have to treat him like a fucking monster when he shows up. It's gonna be great.
Yeah.
And I really love that. Oh god. Daito, Duvad, and Xander did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Fantastic job.
I really like the fact that we went in and decided to put some Final Fantasy classic references, like the UI bar and the damage and the limit break section, because I think that really adds a lot to the fight, especially when there's so many things that like from Zelda that is in the fight, and then like just being able to implement more and more things for Final Fantasy as well. So we kind of balance that out.
I remember bringing that up during the research meeting. I was like, if we're doing cloud, we have to bring up the UI, because that's just such a staple for Final Fantasy 7. It's so cool.
Absolutely. I think we've done that we did that in Tifa, I think, as well, right? I can't remember.
Yeah.
But speaking of like from classic to this, Nick, you were also jumped in pretty early on in Death Battle as an editor.
I did.
Like the change of style. What I guess just talking about 10 years of Death Battle. What is the biggest change for you as far as like making a Death Battle episode that stands out to you?
For me, I've become a big fan of going into After Effects and pushing the G button on my keyboard, which is the masking tool. Because there's a whole lot of stuff you can do with that if you are able to put in the time to be creative. And there's a whole lot less of a time crunch nowadays working on the show than there used to be. So I'm afforded the time to do things like you might have seen earlier on. I did some like motion tracking for the shot of the eagle at the beginning of Cloud's rundown or whatever. Stuff like that was just
really good.
Yeah, like normally I love doing comic book panels and stuff like that. This is obviously not an episode that focuses on those, so I kind of just took it upon myself to find other cool things I can do with like 3D footage and stuff like that. So motion tracking was one. Just anytime I can get a little bit fancy with the motion graphics is something that
a lot more time to put more polish and more creativity into.
Yeah, there was a conversation recently. I can't remember what the subject was, but you were involved, and we were talking about like other matchups for Death Battle, and you were like, "Oh, we should do more comic book stuff," because I want to do like bring in more comic book panels. And I was like, "You're maybe the only person in the world that wants us to do more comic stuff."
That was a Google meeting like a day or two. No, yesterday. It was yesterday.
Lots of stuff happens, man. We were working on so many things. I don't remember what happened yesterday.
Death Battle is one big juggling act. Just that's if you're not to say that's to say nothing about people who work on multiple shows in various capacities either. But yeah, super fun episode to edit, and it looks like you guys had a fun time editing and directing and writing and researching and all that stuff too.
And voicing.
And yes.
And voicing.
And that concludes the first half of this season. And our next episode will be, well, I'm not going to spoil it. You're going to have to find out later on.
Rude.
Yep.
But I saw a quick flash of something.
Year is going to be so awesome. I'm so excited.
Thank you so much, guys, for jumping in on this and this commentary. Thank you, everybody watching, for watching this and supporting us.
Watch DBX as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
DBX is back. It's going to be bigger and better than ever this year. Holy shit. It's fantastic. Billy's been doing such a cool job with it. Definitely check out DBX.
Look out for episode 5, just saying.
Yes. And Death Battle will return this September. Thank you very much.
And the matchup is